mò sư te saki nó sư te me nó pa ka phele sa da pa saki le ta ri wa yu da pho ke ni da ke kho ke khele pa pho ni saki se ba mo
because their people are receiving Jesus.
nó ba le pwe bdo ne ba wa kho bo pho se ba ne bdo ne ba ta ke kho ke sa shu kri kho le wa yu da pho kho lo
And the Jewish people are not.
me wa yu da pho ne ke lo tu lo di sa kri ba
Now, none of these are questions we struggle with in our day.
ta si kwa se de pha ne me le po so ke kha de pe de ba kwa sa me do ba
We are an overwhelmingly Gentile church.
ba le pwe a ke phe bo mu khele pe me da pwa yu pa de kho bo mu pho ta u pho lo ko ne
But there are issues here that are relevant to us.
nó ta có ta kêu này lâm cô à lẽ bắt thuê được bao nhiêu
The accusation Paul is answering is
nó ta lẽ support lu ba nó bắt sĩ sơ kể ta lẽ ta sụt xuôi ở ta bắt đi bắt cái mạo hơn này
God has changed the rules.
nó cái sao yêu này cho tới lẽ ta tu ra thọ lý
God is not keeping God's promises.
nó cái sao yêu này thì khi cả ta ở lọ ba
And Paul says, no, God has not changed the rules.
nó support lu ba bua xe kể ta kêu lẽ cái sao yêu ta cho tới lẽ ta tu ra thọ ba
And God is keeping God's
cái
promises.
sao yêu khi cả ta ở lọ đi về thọ lọ
And that's relevant to us, isn't it?
nó từ lọ lớp của số kê
God is reliable.
nó cái sao lẽ bên nào thì biết vào lẽ bên nào thì
And God keeps God's promises among us.
nó cái sao yêu khi cả ta ở lọ lẽ bùa
Sometimes in surprising
แต่บล็อตข้อนี้เราก็เมื่อก็มาเว้ย
and unforeseen ways.
เราเลือกไปที่เราเลือกเกลียดโอพลาปู่เลือกไปที่โซกวัดพลาบ้านเนี่ยเว้ยมาเว้ย
But God is righteous in the book of Romans.
เนาะเลือกลีโรเมียปุ่นเนี่ยเว้ยปะพลาเว้ยก็ใส่อยู่ไม่ก็ใส่เลยเนาะตัวเว้ยโลเว้ย
And that means God keeps God's promises.
เลือกไม่เว้ยปะพลาเนี่ยมาเลยก็ใส่อยู่ไม่ก็ใส่เลยขี้ขักเลยแต่เอาหรอ
The second point is
เนาะตาที่คิดมีหัวเนี่ย
we should not think we are better than other people.
เนาะปัจจุบันชั่วโมงเลยเป็นมีกว่ากี่นี่กว่าการที่ภาพอ่ะ
The Gentiles think they're better than the Jews.
เนาะว่าเขาบอกมือโพคริปโพที่ภาพเนี่ยชั่วโมงเว้ยเลยเอาไว้ที่กี่นี่ดีกว่ายูดาโพคริปโพดี
And Paul says, you're no better than the Jews.
เนาะสปอร์ตลูเทว่าที่ตื้อตึงกี่นี่ว่ายูดาโพคริปโพบ้า
And the Jews think they're better than the Gentiles.
ว่ายูดาโพคริปโพชั่วโมงเลยเอาไว้ที่กี่นี่ว่ายูดาโพว่าเขาบอกมือโพคริปโพดี
And Paul says, you Jews are no better than the
เนาะ
Gentiles.
ตื้อเสกตื้อตึงกี่นี่ว่ายูดาว่าเขาบอกมือคริปโพบ้า
And he silences everybody
เนาะเอาไว้มาบุ้ยมาบ่อยกว่ากูว่าเดี๋ยวเลยป่าสุภาษาดี
by saying all have sinned
เนาะเลยอันเบี้ยว่าตากระตุ้นเพื่อเลยว่าเคลื่อนมาตัดเดียบาล้อ
and come short of the glory of
เนาะ
God.
ปลอดเตเลยตัดเดียบาปูล้อ
They're both in the same position before God.
เนาะเพราะว่ายูดาไม่ว่ายูดาคริปโพไม่ว่าเขาบอกมือคริปโพไม่เนี่ยว่าต่อดีตัวเลยก็สร้างไม่ยากล้อ
They should exercise faith in Jesus Christ.
บักบ้าเทนมิเนี่ยบักบ้าอุดตันน่ะบักบ้าอุดตันน่ะเลยก็สร้างคริปปูล้อ
So that's a very simple view of the book of Romans.
เอาไว้ไม่ได้เลยปัจจัยเลยยันเลยหลีโรเมตะเก็บล้อ
Any questions?
แกได้ดีกว่าว่ะ What the meaning of Zion
What? Mean of what?
Zion what the meaning of Zion
Zion. Zion could be used to talk about the city of Jerusalem.
เนาะซีโยเนี่ยบล็อตข้อเนี่ยตาเตออตาตัวเลยไม่เว้เนาะเวเนาะเยรูซาเล็มเว
Zion took a broader meaning to mean the nation of Israel.
เนาะแต่บล็อตข้อซีโยเนี่ยตาฮีเนี่ยคอมยอพันเลยไม่เว้อิสราเอลดอร์กลินดักก็เลยซีโยอย่างนี้เสก
Could be seen as a place where God rules, where God's kingdom is.
เนาะตาที่อดีไม่เว้ตาล่อเลยอยู่อ่ะเปเว้ดออยู่อ่ะโอเวล่อ
It could be seen as home for the Jewish people.
เนาะตาที่ตาสิญาตานับพ่อเสกเลยดิไม่เว้ปะยูดาโพอัลลอฮ์อักเลฮีขออัลลอฮ์อักเล
Does that answer your question?
อาซิสันตา
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
เพราะว่า
ว่าเอาไว้เราที่พ่อมามันนี่ขี้ขึ้นแล้วว่าอยู่เดี๋ยวพวกนี้ก็ตื่นเลยแต่ที่เขาคือแค่เลยก็สิเราเนี่ยเอาเนี่ยครอบครัวเลยเอาไว้ที่หาว่าแต่ที่เขาคือก็สิเอาพวกเนี่ยมันไม่ว่าอะไรตายเลย
ตาคืออย่างไร
เนี่ยเขาเลยจะเอาเงินเขาเราว่าแต่
What is her question is as you said at the end all Jew or Israel they will be safe you said what caused them is what how they will be saved. They will be saved because of they believe Jesus as Savior, or what the other things that cause them to be saved.
Paul says it is a mystery.
Suppose lu hari tewele me weta khusu ta le panna mystery ne ta le panna pot seva mo ta khusu de mi mo.
Which means we can't really understand that.
Le khamya ne me we le panna pot seva te ba kana pot le pot seva.
I think what Paul is saying is,
Ta chomo report tewe suppose lu tewe di
in Paul's day,
le suppose lu aso sector ne
God was not finished with the Jewish people.
sai wa atama de wi we de pa yuda phodi ba.
Even though they did not overwhelmingly receive Jesus,
Awase le pagatele atatu lo ka sakri di ta ke khaki le aso ke khan mo le anogi a go ka tu lo sakri to obasana ke ni
they still played a role in God's plan.
awase me pa le comment awase me pa le ke we ta po ta lo pha do tu mi le sa ta ra kle pa ko mo
But it is important to understand,
pa khone ta le pa redo ta le pa na pa ha ni
to remember,
le pa ke sin no ni
that Paul says a Jew is someone who keeps God in their heart.
no awe pa yuda pho si pa ne tho bo ni awase pa ka sa yo le asa ku tho bo lo mo
When Paul says all Israel will be saved,
no pa suppose lu te we da Israel ke ni ta ki khaki khla
he's not talking about a nation, a place.
awe te te we le khamene wa dot klu do ta lot to ja ni ba
He's writing to Jews living in Rome.
awe kwe we pa yuda pho le o le rome bu ve pha phe we te we khan ni
We associate Israel with a nation in the Middle East,
no we pa de pa te Israel ni wa Israel le o le me de is ke ke ni
a piece of land.
le me we ta lot to le me we ta lot how ko wa to
I don't believe that's all. Paul is not talking about that piece of land in the Middle East.
ta ba te ta chomo pho suppose lu te te we di so me we how ko wa to le me we Israel how ko to how lo ko wa to di ta te chomo ma
He's talking about people all over the world
awe te ba ka le pa Israel o le how ko do de pe ja ni ma
who sincerely follow the Jewish faith.
le anak kasa yu ado no anak sa yu ado no tu le di wa yuda pota so la so
In 70 AD, Jerusalem was destroyed.
this edin nui sik ya edin nui sik ne Jerusalem bata ma ha go pe kala
That was the end of Jerusalem.
patele Jerusalem ne aka so ka te wi pe ni lo ma
It has never been rebuilt.
no ta ta tu ro ke not the blow le ba
And what we're going to find in the book of Acts is this,
le limata pu ne ba thi ba di
that the church began in Jerusalem,
no le limata pu ne ta o phu ne sa ro tu ro fa sa ta do tho be Jerusalem bu
but it spread all over the all over the Roman Empire.
we pra ra sa be do tho be Jerusalem we pra la sa ku sa da le Rome ata pe kla ne
And the city of Jerusalem is left behind.
no we pra la sa lo le ne do tho ku sa da lo me me Jerusalem we da do tho o we chi ke tho ke lo pi we o we chi ja ne chi pho ja ne
The only time Paul mentions Jerusalem
no ta se to the to le sa pa lu yu tho Jerusalem ne
is when he writes about the elders of the Jerusalem church.
no le awe kwe we no awe le ta pho khona o le Jerusalem ta pho bu ne
And it is negative.
me we kwe we le atagi de pa mo
They are opposing what he's doing.
no awe se ta pho khona de ba me thoda so ta le so pa lu ba we de pa ne
And then we have the Jerusalem Council in Acts.
no le limata bu ne bo do patele Jerusalem akok ka council ta pho pa do ma
Where the elders in the Jerusalem church
no patele no ta pho khona de pa ne o pho do thi lo de ka le ta pho pa do bu yi Jerusalem ta pho yi
say, okay, Gentiles can become Christians without becoming Jews.
no le awe se lo we le okay no pa ta kho pa mu kripo se pa ne ke ra wa kripo se me tu lo me to hi ka ta set ta yuda pho ta set ta la lu hi ka yuda ta sa da so na ke ne ke ra kripo se mo
And that is the end of the place of Jerusalem in the story of the Christian church.
no pen ni blo ne Jerusalem wa kripo ta si so le Jerusalem ke ta ba ne lo
Now, Jerusalem is mentioned in the book of Revelation,
was na pa ke thi ke Jerusalem le ta yi ro le lo pla pu ne
but it's a symbolic.
awe me we ta ado lo ma yi ro we ne me ta ado lo ma
It means a place where God rules.
me we ta lo le yi tha we le lo pla me ta ka sa ya ata po ma
Our problem is we associate Israel with a piece of land.
nyo ni ha ne bwe ha de ke ba but me pali so se me na pa ni pa na pa we pa me pa Israel pa na pa di me hokot ko le ta pa pa no ke ni di me we ta law ni
And that is not what Paul means by Israel.
ba sa ro ta phe phe ni pa ar ke ni so pa lu ni de me computer di ho te we ni
Does that answer the question?
ta si sen da si se je ma
ya da te nyala ke ne pa de do o ke tele pa Israel la pa yuda po na akera pa kripo ne o atu lo ke sa Yesu Kristo mo o pu person ni le sa shulu
how many percent right now currently how many percent the Israel people are receiving Christ as a savior
I don't know. It's not many. But Paul says, when Paul talked about all Israel will be saved, he's talking about Jews who have not become Christians.
now aware muko di ta te so no wi ho di ta
Well,
sin
I take that back. I don't know. I don't know. Very few Jews become Christians these days.
na ko ka me ta a ba mo wo yu da po ke ra kri po ni o da sha sha po ni lo mo
At the beginning of the book of Acts,
le limata khoti so so ni
the majority of people becoming Christian were Jewish.
now pa ke ra kri po so so khoti yu me da wo yu da po lo limata ki se mu ni
By the end of the book of Acts,
pa sa tu le limata ka te lo ni
the vast majority of people becoming Christian were Gentiles.
now limata ka te lo ni pa ke ra kri po ak te ni ke ra ke le pa ka lu ga te pa mo
Okay?
ke ya
Any other questions?
na fi kwa ga wa ko de ro me bu ni ne fi kwa o do du lo no muko
Next week we will talk briefly about the book of Philippians.
o de nu ne pa ke te ba ka do Philippi li ge
We will then go talk about the book of Hebrews
na pa ke te se ko li Hebrew
because it has some ideas in it we don't talk much about.
na le ta ge ten na bo o do ta ten no le pa te o ama le li de ne pu
And finally, in the last class, we'll talk about the book of Revelation.
lo ki ke te o de pa ke te ba ka do li lo pla ni no
Okay?
We're going to do Acts.
Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the next time we will talk about the book of Acts.
ke ko de wa le pa ke te li ma ta ma no
Then very briefly about the book of Philippians.
na li me Philippi o de pa ke te o lo ba kwa lo te che po lo
One passage in the book of Philippians
na ba le li ta agi te o lo cha a ma te ta to po le Philippi bu
that has had a lot of influence on how we understand Jesus.
na we o do ta to we ni me ta le no ka sa yu wa sa kri me ta le ni no me ta le ri do ma
If you want to read the book of Acts this week, that would be good.
de we pha ba che li ma ta we de nu ya ni me ta gi no
All right? God bless you.
okay no ta blue
Have a good Advent.
Pablo Pado.
Thank you, Ron.
thank you very much
I just need to check. Who is using the Jackson? Oops, they just left. Do you know who would be Jackson, Gilar?
Jackson is a Muku. Her name is Muku. Jackson, Muku. One the power. You have better kita lah. Kita lu dia lah.
Is that
Mata apa kau nyala?
you're welcome?
Hãy subscribe cho kênh Ghiền Mì Gõ để không bỏ lỡ những video hấp dẫn
ဟိုဝိုင်းလား
Yep.